Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we are back and we are live. And I'm coming to you from Smart City Glasgow, all the way over here in the heartland of Scotland. We're going all around the world, from America to Australia, and we do that thanks to Truth Frequency Radio Network. So I want to give a big shout out to everyone that is tuned in for today's show, and it's going to be another good one. How can I be so confident about that? Because it's one of our regular guests that I have got back with us today. We hadn't actually arranged a show or a date for this month until just last week, so I'm very pleased that he could be with us at very short notice, because a very, very busy man indeed. He's speaking at online conferences here, there and everywhere. We'll find out more about that tonight, because we're going to be talking to Ben Emlyn Jones. Yes, indeed. And we're going to be talking to who, in my opinion, is one of the leading researchers into all things ufology, cryptids, high strangeness, conspiracies, and he's definitely one of the best that the UK has to offer. He's also the guy behind Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. And he is here live with us from a very sun-baked UK. Yes, indeed. Ben, how you doing, sir?
Not bad, thanks, Kev. Not bad. And it's great to be back on the show again. And happy birthday for the other day.
Oh, thank you very much. Not that I need reminding, 45 successful laps around the sun. Still going strong,
It's an achievement, mate. See it as an achievement.
So are you older or younger than me?
I don't want to say, but I'm in the same ballpark, more or less.
So you're like a woman. You don't want to give your age away.
It's just an old habit of mine, because there's too many. There's too much baggage associated with it, I think, Kev. It's
man of mystery. He goes by no number.
I'm such an open book in every other way. I've got to leave some of my parts of my life mysterious. So.
I like it, dude. I like it. So what have you been up to, man? What's been going on in the world of Ben?
Travelling for the first time in ages. I've actually been travelling. I'm a seasoned traveller, and I'm used to doing a lot of it. And during the lockdown, it's been frustrating not being able to get out and about. So literally, the last conference I went to was in February last year at the Rawcon in Hull, and that was it. I did, as you said, I've been doing lots of online conferences and Zoom calls and Skype calls. It's not quite the same. But now I finally managed to get away, because weekend before last, I was at the Basis Project Conference in Wiltshire, which is really, really good, organised by Miles Johnston. He really does a good conference, and this one was a classic. In fact, tomorrow I'm off to Watford, because on Thursday and Friday I am speaking at the Awake and Aware conference, and then the following weekend I'm going to be speaking at Truth Seekers Northeast. So yeah, I'm sort of jetting around, well, not internationally, but I'm jetting around the country right now, Kev, and it's great. Yeah, I've missed it.
Good stuff, man. So are you actually making a presentation at the Watford one? What are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, I'll be doing a talk on making a few perspectives about the next couple of years based on what I know about current affairs and the recent past. Just a few predictions to see if they come true or not. Just some guesswork, really, but I think educated guesses about where we're going to be going in the next couple of years.
Ah, nice. I like to hear it. So, Ben, what's been happening? We've had World UFO Day. What's been going on in that field of research?
It's quite amazing, because it does seem charged with destiny this particular year. Both UFO Day and World Disclosure Day, July the 2nd and July the 8th. There seems to be a feeling, there's certainly a distinct feeling that it's more important than usual, much more important than usual. And we had, I think it's because of everything that's been going on in the world at the moment. I mean, of course, with the UAP revelations and things like that. Of course, it is actually World Disclosure Day, July the 8th. This refers to July the 8th, 1947, which was the day that General Roger Ramey of the 8th Army Air Force, held a press conference in Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas, already put on display some wooden sticks, some tin foil, some pieces of aluminium and loose crumpled material. And he told the world's media that this is what Major Jesse Marcel of the Roswell Army Air Force Base had mistaken for an alien spaceship. 74 years have passed. The official position on the government hasn't changed on that particular event. However, there's no doubt that there is a seismic shift in the way UFOs are being portrayed, and there has been since 2017, and that's very interesting because we could be reaching a point where the truth embargo, as Steve Bassett calls it, is no longer sustainable. And we've had so much has happened, Kev. We've had the UAP ETF report, which I've spoken about on previous shows. That came out. It's when I first saw it and I skimmed it, I thought, oh, this is a waste of time. When I read it again more carefully, I realised there's perhaps a bit more going on with this. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm with your first assessment. I'm not too impressed at all. Not overly impressed, but I think I've been looking at it a different kind of way. I think that whole kind of thing with the whole 2017, all the way building up to the UFO, the UAP file, was never aimed at people like us. It was aimed more at the people who aren't into UFOs. The kind of, if you want to call them the normies, the whatever. I don't like putting labels on people, but let's just say the people that weren't into UFOs before. And when they started to see Tucker Carlson and mainstream media and people talking about it, I think that would have had a major effect on their behaviour and how they react and how they now view the topic. And then that begs the question then, Ben. Begs the question, why?
Exactly. You see, that's absolutely true. I do feel that a lot of what's coming out now, it seems familiar to people like you and me who are familiar with the subject. But
I think that's why we sometimes can look at it, like when you first looked at it as well, we can kind of think, oh, damp squib. But then to somebody who's not into any of this information, but this is like, wow, the government are talking about UFOs and things, you know?
Is it? I sometimes get the feeling that the general public is being given a crash course in ufology. They're basically, it's all the information that enthusiasts, as they call us, for the last 74 years have been collating and focusing on, at the exclusion of all else, often with the exclusion of the general public, because it's been seen as something fringe and far out, and even a joke, really. That now essentially if supposed you want to give the general public more information, you need them to catch up because they're coming to the class so late. So this is basically emergency revision. They are basically cramming all this information into a space of maybe just a few years because they don't want to dump too much on an unprepared public. So I'm not sure. For
and
what
what's
purpose?
happened, dude? Mick West has become like some kind of pseudo-celebrity within ufology now. He's like the go-to debunker.
He is. Now I've got mixed feelings about Mick West because he does seem to be.
So do I. Most of them leaning towards the really, really bad feelings.
Well, it's unlike most skeptics. I find he's reasonably respectful. He's not demeaning. You can talk to him. He's the kind of guy I could sit down, have a pint with, and talk about things, and I wouldn't get the feeling he was laughing at me or looking down his nose at me. Most skeptics, I would. I mean, if it was Professor Brian Cox, the pint would be able to go over his head. Yeah. But Mick West, I could sit down and be civil to. But then I get this frustration, which I've written quite a bit about Mick West, actually, including in UFO Truth magazine, where I analysed about 4 of his videos. I sense that he's committing several fallacies. One of them, I get the feeling he's raising the bar because the kind of experiences that David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, and the others are reporting have been reported before. In fact, for a long time, military pilots have been reporting these experiences for many decades. There's some very good and very well-researched case studies from World War II. The skeptics, of course, the first thing they say is, well, they could be mistaken, they could be wrong. We don't have any gun camera footage. We've got no visual evidence at all. If that visual evidence existed, I'd believe you, but until then, there's just not enough evidence. And now what's happened is that goal has been reached. Those goalposts have been crossed. That bar has been jumped over. Rather than just admitting it, the skeptics, Mick West and people, skeptics like him, are simply, no, we're going to move these goalposts a bit further. We're going to raise that bar a bit higher now, and I get the feel they're changing the rules as they go along, as if they don't. I think they don't want to admit for emotional, cultural, and psychological reasons they don't want to accept that this is real, and they are fooling themselves into thinking they're being scientific by redressing every single case with certain conditions and then changing those conditions as the original conditions are fulfilled. So that frustrates me. Mick West also, I believe, is committing what I call the clown's day off fallacy, because when he was doing in a debate with was it Lou Elizondo, I think it was. I mean, he's done several really good debates. The one with Alex Dietrich is brilliant. I mean, she absolutely corners him. It's fantastic. But the one he did with Lou Elizondo was almost as good. And he basically says Elizondo eventually forces him to explain the reports of the Tic Tac, and Mick West says, "Well, I think probably David Fravor saw a reflection in his cockpit canopy." And that is basically this is what I mean by the clown's day off fallacy. I mean, it's like saying
that's his worst. I must admit that's like his worst attempt at debunking. It really is. It's bad.
Yeah, it's like saying, well, a clown had a day off from the circus and tricked the whole thing. And you say, well, how do you know? What clown? Oh, I don't know what clown. It's just I'm guessing. And because it's non-ET, it wins by default for, well, reasons and things like that. And what happens is if you do this, basically what they're saying is because I can imagine a physically possible explanation that is non-ET for this particular phenomenon, it wins by default because it's non-ET. And no matter how unlikely it is, Kev, no matter how unlikely it is, you accept it first above all others. That, to me, what that means is that basically debunking and explaining becomes, whichever term you use, becomes an exercise of the imagination. And it's unfalsifiable, really, because so long as you can think of something physically possible, even if it's extremely unlikely to explain something away.
I mean, I think there's better ways of kind of. I mean, I'm quite sceptical, I must admit, and that doesn't mean It doesn't mean I think David Fravor's lying, not in the slightest. You know, when you look at the Tic Tac, for example, we'll use that one, Ben, and we probably differ on our explanation for this, and that's cool. That's okay. That's our opinions. You know, you look at the patents that came out in the Drive article not long ago, and there was something in that looked very much like a Tic Tac kind of shape. You start to look into some of the programs and some of the companies that are working on advanced avionics and advanced electronic warfare. And it just so happens down that coastline, that shoreline, you're talking about a lot of military industrial complex type companies. And you can even go to some of their websites where they're demonstrating things that look like Tic Tacs. And then you might think, well, what about the radar? Well, again, you can spoof radars since the 50s. And again, that's my opinion. And that doesn't mean that the people who are reporting this, the Fravors, the other witnesses, doesn't mean they're in on the secret. Because I just find it really convenient as well that these things happen to have been flying around where they just perfect to have been filmed, Ben. It just you know what I'm saying? They just happen to turn up off the side of an armada out there when the Navy just happened to be out there. So again, it could be something otherworldly. And some of that tech that I'm talking about, the black type of project tech, I would imagine perhaps that's back-engineered technology from, say, a Roswell, maybe some other crash retrieval. And again, who knows? Who knows? But do I think Fravor's lying? No, definitely not. Elizondo, still on the fence about him, because once a spook, always a spook. But yeah, it's like, it's intriguing. It's fascinating. That's all I know.
Yeah, I think you've been watching Alien Scientist again.
A big fan of Alien Scientist.
Yeah.
Been watching
I think we mentioned
years.
him before, didn't we?
Yep.
We mentioned, yes, I watch him as well.
Yep.
And I know what he's been saying about the Tic Tac. He showed the photo of he showed some images of experimental aircraft that look like the Tic Tac, and I accept that is real. And I think the information he provides in his videos is absolutely valid. I suppose the question then, I mean, literally, you can't actually rule out that is exactly what those pilots are seeing. You can't rule that out because we basically can't see them closely enough. We haven't knocked on the door and seen who's sitting in the cockpit. So we don't know. On the other hand, I suppose my question would be, well, what is it doing near the U.S. Navy? What is it doing? You yourself mentioned that it's flying very close to the U.S. Navy. This is this battle group around the Nimitz, which has a live fire capability. It seems that's not what you do with a secret aircraft. If it was a secret aircraft, you'd be flying it in the secret airways above Area 51.
Not if you wanted it to be filmed.
That's the question. That is where I was going. That's where I was coming to. If it's possible they want us to see these things for some reason, this is what Stephen Greer has said about as well. He's got a new video out.
Yeah.
For
I've
example,
not seen it yet, actually. I've not seen it.
Right. Oh,
is it good?
I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's quite something. But the
well, I imagine.
You know, obviously these alien reproduction vehicles, as Mark McCandlish called them, who's sadly he's gone now. He's left us. They are based, as you said, on possibly the study of crash flying saucers. They have been perfected. They have been built here on the Earth by humans at secret laboratories and places like that, and possibly they've been flown close to human habitation because they want people to see them and think that they're aliens, and that is a disturbing thought, because if they want people to think that these things are aliens and they're not, well, why? It's
a good way of keeping people away from looking at what's going on in black projects. It's a good way of maintaining secrecy. If you've got people all talking about aliens and things coming from other planets, you're not looking at where it's really coming from and what we're really talking about, you know?
Well, I don't think it really is, Kev, because it's a very risky gambit to draw someone's attention towards something with the ultimate objective of deflecting it away. I mean, it could backfire in so many ways. It's unbelievable.
Not if you control the narrative. This is like classic controlling the narrative. You know, well, if you can set it up to have a sighting and then make it into a big UFO sighting, and you make a big song and a dance about it, because I would imagine these kind of companies have pull when it comes to social media. They can probably amplify signals. They would make sure a lot of people seen this in their news feed, and they make a big hullabaloo about it's this and it's that, and then they can either keep that narrative going, you know, to maybe set it up and make these people look silly at a later date, or just keep it going to keep people away from what we're really looking at, our technology, free energy, the kind of things that would really be a paradigm changer, you know?
Seen as I think the government in the US certainly has the ability to develop these things secretly, as they did the spy planes in the 1950s. All I can say is what I would do in that situation. It'd be rather like a bank robber. If I robbed a bank with somebody else, there's several things you could do. When you could go into the middle of the woods, dig a hole, put the money in there, cover it over, and then not tell anyone about it, keep it and say nothing about it. Or you could bury it a hole in the ground, but then dance on top of it, wearing some kind of weird pink tutu or something. And whenever a police car comes past, you could wave and say, excuse me, officers, yeah, just to let you know, there's no money buried here, just some unicorn bones, okay? Get it? My bet is that the latter stash would be found first, and the latter robber would be exposed and arrested first before the former. Because that kind of is in the situation. I think that is an illustration of the situation we're in. We know that the US government does develop secret aircraft. I mean, if it's free energy stuff, they're not talking about that. But we know in the past they developed jet aircraft, which were very sophisticated for their time. And the SR-71 Blackbird, for example, looks very modern. It was actually developed through the late 1950s. It would look like something sci-fi compared to the people of that time. Now, it was done so at Area 51, and they did what they have still doing today. They create restricted airspace and airways. In fact, this actually happened a couple of months ago. They created a temporary secret airway between Area 51 and the coast of California to test ones. We don't know what it was they were flying. I mean, all the plane spotters in America were heading for that area, trying to catch a glimpse of it, you know. But I wouldn't actually fly these things over cities and then say, with lights attached to them, and say, hey guys, That's a flying saucer, all right, not a secret aircraft. Okay, I wouldn't do that.
I mean, see, I would disagree, because you look at the Belgian wave, and then you're looking at TR-3Bs that were deliberately flowing over populated areas. So they were to be seen. And what did they make out these TR-3Bs were? Alien triangular vehicles. Aliens, yes. aliens. Because that way, you set up, it's like a straw man. You throw it out there, you get people talking about it, but you lead them, you misdirect them.
But would the secret of the TR-3B be kept better or worse if that Belgian flap hadn't happened, assuming that the Belgian flap was secret government technology?
Well, we're still none the wiser as to whether a TR-3B exists or whether it's alien, right?
You see, because some people will claim that this is what Bob Lazar was. He was just simply put out there to keep people's attention away from Area 51. Just because too many people were looking at Area 51 and wondering what it was. So Bob Lazar was put out there to prevent people paying Area 51 any attention. Well, that's not worked very well, Kev, has it? That has backfired big time.
You still got a lot of people distracted, but you still got a lot of people distracted by Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar's like a pimp from Nevada. He's like a pimp from Vegas. I'm not saying he doesn't know a bit of physics and things, but if people are talking about Bob Lazar and Bob Lazar's stories of Area 51, probably quite convenient, because it's probably nothing near what's actually going on. And then, so if you've got people talking about that, and then you can have an easily kind of questionable character like Bob Lazar, then that's even better, because then you can start shooting holes in his narrative. And again, the general public, not people like me and you, but the general public will just think, oh, there we go again. All hokey-cokey, those crazy people in ufology, that Bob Lazar and all his unobtainium. And it's a weird and wonderful world. And you see, this is the thing. We're living in an age now where it's hard to even unravel how many psyops, how many misinformation, disinformation, how many levels to the lies, the LARPing, the everything that's going on out there makes it so hard. It makes it so hard to find the true signal in the noise,
Oh, definitely. All we can do is try, Kev, I think. All we can do is try. I think there is indeed disinformation, and there is attempts to control the narrative, control people's perception. I think it's different from what you described, though. It's a different kettle of fish, but no doubt it is happening. It's happening on one level or another.
Well, we can agree to disagree on that, but what else has been happening in the world then, Ben?
Well, we're kind of sticking to the same subject, Kev. You haven't seen A Cosmic Hoax, an expose yet, have you?
No.
That's Greer's new film. Now, this is funny, because this is a guy who believes... I think this is a guy who believes he has the right answer. Dr. Stephen Greer. He believes he knows what's going on, and but most other people don't. It's actually... I've got a lot of problems with this movie. I'm going to have to provide spoilers, if that's all right, but he attacks a lot of people in this. I think he accuses them of, for example, being agents of the government without providing any adequate evidence, I suggest. Although, I mean, I think we shouldn't hang on every word uttered by people like Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon or Tom DeLonge. We shouldn't hang on their every word, but I would look for specific evidence before accusing them. And he goes on further, though. He goes on to say that Leslie Kean essentially is a part of this as well. Now, Leslie Kean is like a dedicated researcher, been doing this almost as long as he has, and a lot of what we know actually comes from her work. She's written a very interesting book about generals and officials go on the record. I did read the book. I should remember the title, but it was a very interesting book. So what Greer is saying is basically all of new ufology is a hoax. Or everything the UAP, which since the term UAP became popular post-2017, is a massive hoax to set us up for the idea that aliens are evil and they're going to invade us. Now, unfortunately, that is a possibility. That is a distinct possibility. But I don't think... I'm not willing to take... I'm not certain as he is that that's what's going on. Greer says he knows the aliens, he's met them, he understands what they are, and that everything's happened since 2017 is a lie to manipulate the public into a false impression of what the extraterrestrials are. Which, to be fair to him, if what we were saying earlier is true, like the Tic Tac and things like that being flown near the US Navy in over Phoenix is true, then you've got to ask yourself, why is that happening? Why are they allowing people to see these things and thinking they're aliens?
You know, it's very naive on Stephen Greer's part, isn't it? You know, to take the word of whatever alien he's spoken to, that in the whole universe, you know, they're all good guys. They've all got our best interests at heart. You know, oh, well, I'll just take an alien. I'll take that alien's word for it. I know, Stephen Greer, for me, he's an interesting fellow. Followed his work for a long time. Don't say, I can't say I agree with most of it. He's too kind of love and light. I think he looks at it through very, very tinted glasses, shall we say. But I'll definitely be checking out his documentary. It's been interesting to see what's been happening with Daniel Sheehan as well. Now, we're on the break from what I can gather. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second part of today's Kev Baker Show, right here on your number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. Remember, check out my good friend Don Wiskin over at Extendovite. Go to heartdrop.com. That's heartdrop.com. And I'll hopefully have Don back on here next week. I will get to arranging that after today's show. And then tomorrow, I think it's Jimmy Jeans is going to be on. And then on Thursday, we've got not just Scotty Lopez, but it's a full moon. And that means Scary Mary is back in town. Mary DeCina will be here on Thursday. So the phone lines will be open for all of you to get a little bit of tarot, a little bit of psychic reading done. Love it when Mary is on KBS, and I hope you can all make it for that. But today, joined by Ben Emlyn Jones, and we're getting into the state of ufology. I'm sure we've been here many times before, Ben, but it needs to be done. We were talking about Stephen Greer before the break. Man, takes me back all those years he's been doing this, you know, the Disclosure Conference. That makes me think of Dr. Carol Rosen and my favourite clip, The Last Card. You know,
yeah, and, that's definitely the most important one, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're about to talk about it just when we went to the break there. So what's going on with this very public kind of, I don't want to call it a spat, because the two of them kind of work together, but Stephen Greer and Daniel Sheehan, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's, I'm not exactly sure, but Dr. Stephen Greer did a little video. He just did a vlog for about half an hour where he mentioned Danny Sheehan. Now, Danny Sheehan is the solicitor for the Disclosure Project and has been for 30 years. He's a good guy, actually, Sheehan. Yeah. He defended Dr. John Mack when he was basically being kicked out of his job at Harvard University for saying, God forbid alien abduction involves real aliens. And he is currently acting for Lou Elizondo, because for Elizondo, I can't remember the details of the lawsuit, but Elizondo is suing his former employers, the Department of Defense, something to do with his email account. I can't remember the details. And Danny's acting for him. Now, Greer, I don't think he's very happy with this, because Greer is 100% certain, I think, from what I've seen, he's 100% certain that Lou Elizondo is as you say, a spook. Now, I'm not 100% certain that Elizondo is not a spook. I think it's possible that he is, but I think Greer doesn't have the evidence to make the kind of accusation he has, and I don't think he's very happy with Sheehan acting for him. And what's more, he's basically said to Sheehan that Sheehan has to get Elizondo to confess to his true nature, what he's really doing, or Sheehan is going to drop him as a client.
Well, I'd heard in the documentary that you talked about, I'd seen a public post from Sheehan, and so it's not as if I'm giving away any inside info or anything here, but he had come out and talked about how he was very disappointed in the way that Stephen Greer had taken some of his comments from the original Disclosure conference and then cut them up and made it sound like he was questioning and criticizing and calling out people like Elizondo, people like Chris Mellon. So there's a whole heap of drama going on. And I wonder, you mentioned egos way back when we started talking about this. And look, we've all got to have a bit of an ego to be doing what me and you do, right? So it's not like I'm attacking people for an ego, but Stephen Greer, he seems to have a big one. And I wonder how much of this, it sounds really childish, but it's just down to pure jealousy, the fact that other people are getting the limelight after what he probably perceives as him working tirelessly for his lifetime, trying to get the truth out there. And then he sees a cowboy like Tom DeLonge riding onto the scene, and now Jeremy Corbell with that crazy beard of his, and I don't trust him as far as I could throw him. And they're coming along and they're getting all the mainstream attention. They're flying around on private jets with Bigelow. And I wonder if it's just like jealousy and ego hurt.
I think there's an element of that in. I think he's not happy that Disclosure is not all about him.
Yeah.
Greer wants it all to be about him, and I think he's got every right to be proud of what he's done.
Yep.
As you said, I think an ego is a necessary part of everyone's personality, and people who are devoid of egos are actually they're incomplete. However, everyone has an ego. You and I have egos, but in the case of some people, they don't have egos. Their ego has them.
Yeah.
And Greer, I think, is unfortunately one of these people. And despite the fact that I do respect a lot of what he's done, in fact, he was very influential on me in the early 2000s when I was really getting into exopolitics big time. I think he's got to accept that this sometimes does happen. This is something that has happened to me many, many times. That you go out there, you put your thing out there, and then other people come along and they appear to be more successful, better well known than you are, or more people listen to them. That's something that's happened to me many, many times, because anyone who's been in this business as long as you and me, and we've both been doing this for quite a while now, is going to experience that. What we've got with ufology is we have the old guard, who many of them you saw at the 2001 press conference. And then you have these young guns, as they're called, people like Corbell, people like DeLonge, and people like that who come into it, and they bring a lot of other people in with them. And you have commentators like Ryan Sprague, who has a very good show actually, Somewhere in the Skies, and UFO Jesus, the post-disclosure world on YouTube. People like that who really have only been doing this for a couple of years. Well, they've only been well known a couple of years, and they've made a massive impression. But I think what I'd say to Greer is to say, look, it's no slight on him and what he's achieved that this is happening. He's got to learn to be happy for these other people and realise that what they're doing is going to have a good effect on what you have dedicated your life to. So they're helping you. See, if you care more about your mission than your own ego, then you should be happy that this is going on. Just enjoy the fact that these people are having an effect, because if what you want is disclosure, isn't it? I mean, that's what I want. I honestly don't care who gets to be standing on the podium with the president or whatever when this happens and they want an expert on UFOs. I don't care. I'll go if people ask me to, but if they don't ask me to, that's fine with me. Let's just remember we're all part of a team here. We're all we have a mission.
I like it, dude. We do. We are men on a mission. And talking of missions, you mentioned aliens as well. What did you make of Jeff Bezos today, blasting himself off? I'm very hesitant to say into space, because let's just call it really, really, really high altitude. Technically space. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I've heard. I watched Branson but I haven't been following it very closely. I know Musk, Branson, they've all gone up. All the big.
No, Musk hasn't gone up, man.
He hasn't yet. All right, but I didn't see Jeff Bezos. Now these craft, I mean, they do go past the edge of space, which is technically called the edge of space. They do technically go into space, but they are suborbital ballistic rockets, not orbiting spacecraft. They don't go up. They're not like the International Space Station or the Space Shuttle. They can't go up into space and stay there. they go on a ballistic trajectory, up, and then they come down, and you just get apparently you were only in space for a few minutes, and it's quite a short trip.
I thought you'd have been watching that today, man. I thought you'd have been watching that. I was
I did. Kev, I didn't.
I was out the back sunning myself. My phone was nearly catching on fire. It was that hot out there.
No, it was very hot, yeah. I mean, I missed it, I'm afraid, Kev. I missed this. Is one of the things. There's so much coming at me, so much information. I can't take it all in, and this is one of the things that sort of escaped my attention. But I mean, obviously, what this means, I suppose, is they want to create like a passenger service for getting into space, even on very short trips, and they hope to sell like I think it's 10 grand a ticket or something to various people to go up on these rockets, like this Virgin. What's it called? It's called the Blue or something.
Blue Origin.
The Blue Origin, yeah. There's several different ones coming out. They obviously think this is going to be the tourist trap of the next 10 years. Well, if I had enough money, I think I'd probably take a trip. But there's no. I mean, I'm not. I don't have that kind of money, to be honest. But I'm sure they will find people to fill those seats.
Oh, there's absolutely. There was a teenager on there today. What, $24 million? They paid for that particular privilege, and I think the guy who actually bought the seat, he couldn't actually take part in the flight because of scheduling. Things were going on. Must be tough when you're a billionaire. Plenty of things going on, you know. So he gave it to this like teenage. I think he was Dutch, the young guy. But yeah, youngest astronaut. Technically an astronaut. I think he's 18 years old. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Is that the youngest? I think the youngest person in space then, because the youngest person in orbit, I think was actually Helen Sharman, who was 27.
Yeah, I think this is just like the youngest to go into space, technically.
Oh, right.
Technically into space.
Well, I wonder what it's like, because I mean, you go up there and I mean, you experience weightlessness for a few minutes, and then inevitably it comes down because you're not in orbit, so you have to come down again. It's essentially a very high-flying aircraft. I wonder if it's worth it, Kev. I mean, obviously, like
you said a minute ago, if you had the money, you would. If I had the money, I probably would. So whether it's worth it or not, we probably would, right?
Well, if I had enough money to be able to dispose of income like that, I would. I mean, if I had 24 million, I wouldn't spend all of it on that.
No.
I would. But if I had like 100 million, I might spend like essentially a quarter of my income on that.
I still wouldn't have spent that much.
75 million, wouldn't I? 76 million.
Yeah, still, no, I don't think I'd have spent that much. I'd have waited for the price to come down a bit.
Like everything else, inevitably there'll be cheaper versions of this, and I think it's only a matter of time, before there are actually passenger orbital space flights. They may well, Bigelow might well build his space hotel at some point. Now, that's going to be very interesting, Kev, because you're going to get more and more people going into space, which means it's not going to be just an exclusive for people who have proper training and things like that, and indoctrination, which means people are going to be taking holidays in space. They're going to see UFOs.
Yeah.
Now, how are you going to keep those people quiet?
Again, you could be looking at that being part of the operation that's gone on for 4 years to bring the public up to speed, or to a place where, okay, well, UFOs, even the government talk about them, pilots see them, so yeah, maybe that's what we're getting ready for. I really do. I view the time we're living in now, as crazy as it is, it's like the most exciting time ever. But that being said, I heard somebody describe this the other day as the great filter, and I kind of liked it because it ties in with what I've been saying for a while. We're right on the cusp, Ben, right on the cusp of going into the stars, interplanetary, and whatever lies beyond, wherever we go after that. But at the very same time, it's like a knife edge. We're on the cusp of total collapse, ruination, everything as well. And it makes me wonder if this is like one of these moments where any civilization gets to, like an Atlantis down here, maybe alien civilizations as well. It's like this critical crux moment where you either totally make it or entirely break it,
Yeah, it's one of these the all or nothing moments, I think.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like to me, anyway.
And on top of that, you see, we have a ruling class on the planet today that does not have the best interests of this planet or the people at heart. They are actually attempting to warp civilization into a very twisted authoritarian form of what it should be. That further complicates the matter. And when, as we were saying before, if we have a hoax being played on us, then when it comes to extraterrestrial life, in other words, we're going to get some kind of fake disclosure, which, of course, if you read my book, Roswell Rising, A Novel of Disclosure, you'll know that's what happens initially. What will we go from there? I mean, we have to be on our guard against that, and it's because it could be that at some point. Remember we talked about the alien invasion things on the bus stop last time?
Yeah.
If everyone is going, is scared of hostile aliens, it'll be like the other emergencies that have happened to do with disease in the last couple of years. They will agree to policies they otherwise wouldn't tolerate from the state. Maybe a state of emergency, for example, a suspension of all elections in democracy, a hyper-regulation of the economy, things like that. And if that's the objective of the people behind the hoax, then essentially they'll be tricking us into this situation. And this is something that Greer actually says, and he's right. This is something that Greer is right about. As Carol Rosin says, it's the last card. They play the last card to create a dictatorial one world government. And that's why we can't automatically assume that we shouldn't assume that Elizondo and DeLong and Mellon are being honest with us. But at the same time, if they are, I don't want to miss out on that opportunity. You see what I mean?
Oh, I totally get what you mean. There's that many moving parts. It's like spinning plates. You got to keep your eyes on that many things. It gets confusing, dude. Real confusing, real fast. But you talk about I think we mentioned abductions and things, and I've been watching the second season of Skinwalker, and I've been reading more about Skinwalker Ranch, and
cool.
Yeah, I've been looking into a lot more people that have claimed to have been abducted by aliens. What do you make of all that, Ben? We've spoke about this before as well, but I mean, me, obviously, right? It's like anything. Not everybody that claims to have been taken has been taken. But that being said, I do think there's people being taken. To what end? The agenda, the whole hybridization thing. I don't know what the end game is. It kind of puzzles me. But what do you make of it all, man?
Do you mean generally or specifically about Skinwalker? Because I've not seen season 2.
No, I won't spoil any of Skinwalker for you. Don't worry about that. I mentioned that. Season was great. Yeah, I won't spoil it, but wow, jaw-droppingly good.
I'll watch that. But on the subject of alien abduction, now this is that Greer has his own idea about this too. He's very, very single-minded about it. He believes that it is, again, it's just a hoax. It's something that's done by the government, and it's not actually real. It's people are fooled into thinking they're being abducted by aliens. And there is such a thing as MILABs, military abductions. Yeah. However, it's very common, more common than people think. The kinds of experiences people have when they encounter aliens varies enormously. For example, there are many different. They report encountering many different species. I mean, there's the classic grey. There's also the Nordics and the mantids and the reptilians. I mean, there's a taxonomy of these things, Kev. You could almost write like a book about them. And the aliens themselves appear to exhibit many different kinds of behaviours. They seem to have a wide variety of agendas. They go from. See, Greer has had what sounds like very positive encounters with aliens. He's been lucky enough to meet the nice guys. And some others are. I mean, apparently lots of children at the moment are meeting the nice guys. Mary Rodwell has specialised in those kinds of encounters. But other people meet very different kinds of aliens. The majority appear to be studying us. They're just interested in us. It's almost like they're scientists and we're specimens they're collecting. There are a minority, luckily only a minority, which appear to be very negative. I mean, there are reports of disappearances, permanent disappearances connected to alien abduction and deaths. But luckily they're quite rare from what I gather. But there's definitely something going on. It's been going on for a long time, all through history. I mean, probably in prehistoric times, people were having these experiences, which is where you get the mythology of being spirited away by the fairies and the trolls and things like that in ancient cultures.
Well,
So, interesting subject.
I had Evan and Stephen Strong on from Australia yesterday, and we were talking about the human evolutions, where we came from, and they were showing all of these species. The Homo floresian. There was another couple of skulls, and to cut a long story short, I mean, they kind of try and say that we're the dominant species and we made it to where we are today because we just came across anything we came across, we killed it. But yet, when you look at the skulls, all of these other types of ape, type of primitive human, they all had a far bigger capacity for brains, so they were probably smarter than us. And it got us talking about where we come from. Obviously, I'm talking now about ancient alien type intervention. I want to get your thoughts on that, though. Where do you lie on that, Ben? Do you think, like, in our story, do you think aliens do feature?
There's a reproductive element to many encounters, Kev. People find the gametes are taken from them, ova extracted from women, sperm extracted from men. There are even people who have sexual relationships with extraterrestrials. People like Antonio Villas-Boas and Simon Parkes, for example. It could be that we are essentially our biology has been interfered with. There are certain elements of humans which are very unique in the animal kingdom. We are told we evolved purely from the other primates, that is apes. So we evolved alongside other primates, apes, gorillas, so chimps and gorillas and orangutans and things like that. We all came from a common ancestor, and millions of years ago there were lots of human-like apes walked upright, for example. Possibly Bigfoot is another of the survivors. However, we have many major differences. For example, our skin is not like that of other apes. We don't grow hair all over our bodies. We have skin that's much more like a pig's. We have subcutaneous fat. We also have a nose which points downwards. This is a feature possibly, well, our nostrils point downwards. This is a feature possibly that we have somewhere in our ancestry, an aquatic creature, possibly something like the mermaid type beings you see in that famous docudrama. I don't know the truth, but it's just one of these weird things about humans. Now, did that evolve naturally? In which case, where is the ancestry? Where are the fossils? Or were we made like that by somebody? Maybe the ancestor actually is not on this planet. I don't know about that.
I look at us and I wonder, if we had the technology to go out there to other planets, to literally go and terraform planets and things like that. I'm projecting into the future, but it's not a stretch of the imagination that we at some point would turn up at a planet. We would look at the life that's there, and we might say, well, can we tweak some of that to make it a bit more kind of intelligent? And it's very feasible to me that we would do that scientifically as an experiment, as something to do, because we can. So if that's the case, then absolutely, why wouldn't an alien race do that? And then it makes you wonder, Ben, whether at times when they're coming back here, the imagination goes wild, right? Because are they taking our DNA to splice with a being from another planet so that they can seed that planet with something akin to us? It's fascinating, dude.
Yeah, it makes the mind boggle,
Yeah.
not least because some of the extraterrestrials that people encounter actually look very human. Some witnesses
I've
have
sometimes
reported.
wondered if that's the biggest secret of all. Whether we've all got a kind of common human look to us,
Yeah, it could be a product of parallel development, which is where different life forms evolved into different. They're not actually related, but they evolve into similar forms because they share a similar habitat. Or we are actually literally related to them. I mean, some of them are so human-like that witnesses say, "Well, if you put these guys in normal clothes, I wouldn't look twice as them when you're walking down the street."
Yeah.
It's only because they're wearing weird clothes and they're flying in a flying saucer that they look so remarkable. So They often have very bright blonde hair and bright blue eyes.
Hey, the Nordics, man.
Nordics, yeah. They look like in this film I saw, which I sent you a link to. There's a Nordic alien in that, and I do wonder if the reason they look like us is because we do have a common ancestry. We're possibly seeded by the same. Maybe they're related to us, or we were seeded by something else that seeded both creatures. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but I know that there's a lot of very, very good abduction research. Dave Hodrian, who spoke at the Basis Project conference, he's done a lot of very, very interesting research into the abduction phenomenon. Very interesting indeed. It fascinates me, it really does.
Yeah, have you spoke to many people that claim to be abducted or things like that?
Yeah, I've met quite a few of them, and I would say, one of them I know very well. He's a good friend, and I do believe him. He's very, very sensible kind of guy, very level-headed, and I've been with him when a few strange things have happened. For example, he's something touched him once, and an invisible something touched him at one point, and I could see very clearly that was what was happening.
Wish something invisible would touch me now and again. I'm telling you, that sounds all right.
It might probably be a bit
good
scary.
Money for that, so I would. Now, Ben,
I'd rather someone visible touched me. Before
we go to the break, sir, let people know where they can find out more about your work.
Well, it's Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. That's HPANWO. Just put that into Google, and you will find me. Google is your friend, as Richard Hoagland says. I've got my book, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, and its 2 sequels. If you like this show and what we talk about, I think you'll like these books.
And quickly, where are you going to be speaking? Is it this weekend?
It's actually Thursday and Friday. Awake and Aware in the evening. Wake and Aware, Watford UFO Academy, the High Elms Manor.
Our number 2 on today's Kev Baker show. With me, your host, Kev Baker, and yes, we have got Ben Emlyn Jones. He is here, he is in the hot seat. We've been talking about UFOs, we've been talking about alien abductions, and just during the break, Ben, I was taking a look at some of the material you had sent through to me, and there's something here I hadn't heard of before. And let me just get this here so I get it correct. The 11th green. Now, what are we talking about? And this isn't about golf, right? It's not the 11th hole on the golf. What's going on with the 11th green?
It's a very, very deceptive title, actually, because it's actually it's actually a really, really good film. It's about Dwight Eisenhower. It tells the story of the last couple of years of the life of Dwight Eisenhower, the former U.S. president, so from 1967. It's set in 1967. And he is basically involved in UFOs, UFO research, UFO encounters, things like that. And he's constantly having phone calls from people and having meetings about aliens and UFOs and things like that. And there's a lot of theories that are going around the ufological community about Eisenhower and what he did. For example, the meeting he had at Holloman Air Force Base, supposedly with an alien, and he has a meeting with this Nordic type alien who appears in the film. Also, there's Agent Cooper, who Richard Dolan interviewed, this old guy who suggested that he said that Eisenhower was planning to invade Area 51, which is odd if you consider Area 51 part of the United States, but it sounds contradictory. But this guy was saying, no, Area 51 is not really part of the United States. It operates outside the jurisdiction of the US government, so it's like an enclave of a super government. This film is very well acted. It's very well done. It's about a journalist who meets up with. It's set in different time periods. So there's one time period set in the modern day. There's flashbacks to Eisenhower's time, and it's a really fascinating movie. Actually, really fascinating. It's like it's made from ufology. It doesn't hold back from going into areas that we talk about. It doesn't sort of try to dress them up or water them down. It goes straight in there and addresses a lot of points we make. Yet it's quite a mainstream film. It's not sort of like a garden shed movie. It's it's got some quite well-known actors in. You know, people who not exactly A-list celebrity actors, but people you'll see in other movies. You know, and it's well, Campbell Scott, for example. He's been in quite a few movies. I recommend it. I really do. It's worth watching. You can rent it for a couple of quid off YouTube or Amazon.
And of course, Laura Eisenhower is somebody now who's on the ufology scene as well, right? And she's what, the granddaughter, great-granddaughter?
I think granddaughter.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but yeah, she's interesting, Laura Eisenhower. Yeah, she does her own YouTube videos, things like that. Yeah.
I must admit, I've never looked into her story, anything like that. But just when you said her name there, that's what popped into my mind. You know.
I don't know if she ever knew her grandfather. I mean, she doesn't look old enough to. She may have been a baby when he was like. He died in 1969. If she was alive, she'd have been very young back then because she's not that old herself.
It's Valiant Thor in the movie.
There's an alien very like him. Yeah, he's not named Valiant Thor. He's called Lars, which is actually a Norwegian name.
A Nordic, you say?
But yeah, very like the Nordic aliens, and he sort of lives with. He spends some time living in this retirement home with Eisenhower and his wife, and he is similar to Thor in that sense because Valiant Thor is this alien that supposedly landed and met Eisenhower. I think it was with Eisenhower. And spent time in the White House and things like that. I think it may have been inspired by the very interesting tales of Valiant Thor. You know.
So what's going on with our government while everyone's looking at America and the disclosure that's going on, or as I call it, we call it disclosure. Where's the UK MOD? Where's our stuff? Where's the new Nick Pope? Where's our version of Luis Elizondo, man?
There's no reason why this should centre on the United States, should there? I mean, it just seems to have happened, but
they've always got to make it about them, don't they? They've always got to go and make it about them.
I think maybe Americans think they're like the centre of the world. No disrespect, guys, but you know, some Americans do like regard themselves as the centre of the world. But no, there's a lot of other interesting UFO stories coming out from other places and other countries. For example, the Space Force that was set up by President Trump last year. Other countries have their equivalents. France has and Israel has a Space Force. There's actually the guy who's in charge of that. I think we talked about him before, didn't we? Hamish Shed.
Yeah.
He's actually said some very interesting things about aliens. China has a very well-developed Space Force and has indeed been testing its space weapons.
Well, I mean, a lot of people talking about Mars and things, but why is it, a lot more people aren't talking about the Chinese rover that's up there on Mars as well? They've done that without a lot of fanfare, should I say? Yeah.
But it's interesting about Mars because it's had less publicity than the Perseverance, maybe because it came later. So in a sense, Perseverance took the limelight. The two craft are very similar. They seem to have similar functions. Both have a rover attached to them. Both have have set like new records in Martian exploration. For example, transmitting motion pictures, for instance, which has never been done from Mars before. Recorded sound, things like that. I mean, the Perseverance has had a little helicopter on it, the Ingenuity helicopter. So these are all firsts. And there's been a lot of news stories about Mars lately, which make me wonder if people's attention is being directed in that very strange, stage-conjuring way towards a certain mindset connected to Mars. So, for example, twice now this has happened in the last few months. It's been reported that liquid water has been found on Mars. This is underneath the polar caps. They've actually found large, like lakes. These are quite big, actually. One's the size of Northern Ireland. And they're full of water. Now, the water is very brackish. It's very saline, and it's full of chemicals. But it is liquid water. And it's an area that's supposedly too cold. I mean, the chemicals may be stopping the water from freezing. There also might be some kind of heat source under the ice, possibly a greenhouse effect with sunlight, or maybe even volcanism that's keeping it from freezing. And when you get liquid water, see, we associate liquid water with life. This is why a lot of scientists are speculating there may be life underneath the moons of Jupiter, because we know there's liquid water on those moons beneath the icy crust. So, is it possible that at some point, not long from now, it'll be announced that life has been discovered on Mars? I put discovered in quotes because I believe they probably know life is on Mars, but they just are waiting for a time to announce it. Now, that in itself is not revolutionary, so it's not directly connected to the UFO issue.
But it could be huge. It could be significant. And remember, we were talking about the last card. If we're talking about moving towards this more centralized one world, everyone singing off the same hymn sheet type of world, the kind of discovery that you're talking about there could be framed as a way of calling into question all religions and all those type of things, and then we've discovered absolutely where we've come from. We all come from this strand of DNA, and it came from this rock, and it came from blah-de-blah. Again, it could fit into that ultimate deception. The last card.
It's especially if it can be proved that the life on Mars has evolved independently from that on Earth.
I think we came from Mars at some point. I really do. I'm not saying that all of the evidence of archaeological sites on Sidona, I'm not saying all of them are definitely real, but I reckon there's enough up there on Mars that warrants us at least exploring whether at some time maybe that planet was a lot more like Earth, and for whatever reason we had to get off of there. And I don't know, you look at the name Cairo as well. I think I've brought this up on the show with you before. The whole Arabic name, Al-Kahiri, and that means the base of Mars.
Yeah, that's odd, isn't it?
Kind of weird. Very weird.
I've also, some people said that our circadian rhythm, that is our sleep patterns, are matched to the Martian.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
So it's a little bit longer. See, it's like the Martian day is slightly longer than Earth. It rotates, but I think it's 24 hours and 40 minutes rather than
you think about our eyes as well, right? I mean, our eyes aren't for eyes that are meant to have evolved here with this local star just where it is, right? Just as far away as it is, and well, yeah. We're kind of like, we're always squinting when we look at the sun. Now, that's another piece of evidence I've seen people using. It's almost like our eyes, that they were meant to be looking at light different. It wasn't meant to be as strong as we experience it here, which, moving out from the sun towards Mars, you could make a case for.
But the sun is dimmer, that's right, yeah. And this could explain other things. For example, the things I talked about a little while ago with our different skin and things like that. So if that turns out to be true, if it turns out that we do have ancestry on Mars, or I think if Martian life evolved independently, that's going to be difficult for the worldview that we're this tiny little oasis of life, this little pale blue dot that Carl Sagan called it, in this infinite cosmic desert of noble gases and carbon compounds, is going to be very, very hard to maintain, because the skeptics are going to have to explain why life in all the universe, of all this vastness, life evolved in two places, and they happen to be the planets neighbouring each other. Now, I bet you some will still say it's a coincidence. You'll still get someone who'll pull that card, I bet you. You just wait. But it's not going to be very credible to say that. It's not going to be credible. What it'll suggest is that life is actually a natural emergent property of the universe, and we should expect to find it everywhere. And that then is going to, of course, lead people to think, well, if life evolved to very, very sophisticated levels on Earth, and possibly on Mars in the past, it will have done elsewhere, possibly to the point where creatures could fly long distance in space and visit us. And then they'll say, is that what the UFOs are? So even though life on Mars is not UFOs are real, it sets a train of logic leading inevitably to the question that maybe UFOs are real, and it makes it far more credible in the minds of most people, which is maybe why there's all this attention being focused on Mars right now.
You never know, dude. You never know. I can't disagree with you, man. I can't disagree with you.
We'll see anyway. I mean, I've got a feeling we're going to have answers to these questions soon, Kev. I really think we will.
Yeah, you might be right. I was reading the other day, you were talking there about lakes under the surface of the moons and things, but they've just discovered a couple of lakes under Antarctica.
Mm.
So they have, and we talk about Lake Vostok. I've heard that being talked about in the past. Heard some good stories about there as well. I don't know how much of it's true. Strange creatures emerging from holes that the Russians dug and things like that. But these lakes, they're like an alien world, Ben. They're like an alien
Yeah.
world right here on our own planet, right?
If you go down deep into those lakes, you'll find creatures that have been separated from the rest of the biosphere for millions of years. And there are caves like that as well, and the deep oceans and places like that. So, but they seem to, excuse me, it's like they seem to have managed all right and developed very well in very, very unusual environments. So, for example, where there's a lot of salt, or it's very cold, or there's no sunlight and things like that. So once it does show us, life is very hardy. Wherever it lands, it takes hold and it adapts through natural selection and all these other Darwinian forces, and it stays there. It becomes whatever form it needs to survive. And that's, again, I think that lends credibility to the idea that we will find life commonly throughout the universe.
Do you think that's going to be the next big thing? They'll tell us an exoplanet somewhere's got life on it.
Yeah, definitely. It's good. I've just sent you actually a photograph. Now I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it during the break, but it's an example of the kind of thing maybe we're talking about, because this was in Greer's film. Because in Greer's Cosmic Hoax movie. I don't know if you can see it, Kev. What do you think that is? Is that like from Mars, or where's that from?
Give me 2 seconds, dude.
Okay,
I'm just trying to fix this at the centre. Try and describe it for the audience just now.
Alien autopsy. The Greer has been researching this. He's went to a museum of fashions and things like that, and worked out that the clothing and the hairstyles of the men around the table dated to the 1920s. Some of the men are wearing rubber gloves and aprons, indicating they're pathologists. But there's a couple of guys at the back in suits, indicating that they are observers from maybe the government. I don't know. None of the people there look familiar. And Greer's been sort of looking into it. He got it from a lady who herself got it from when she was working at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in the 1940s when they were developing the bomb. The Manhattan Project and things like that, but she doesn't know where it came from. She doesn't know where she got it from. So I don't know if I don't know if anyone knows any more about that. Unless if someone can see it right now and they recognise some of the figures, is that your granddad? I'd love to know more about it. I really would.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, that one, eh?
Yeah, so when you get the chance to have a look at it, Kev, have a look at it. So it's a bit creepy.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
I can't. No, I think I can see myself. My face is frozen into a bit of a grimace.
Try that.
I can.
Hopefully that'll fix it.
Right, it's just gone grey.
Okay, well, we'll just keep going just now. So what else has been happening then, Ben? What else? Well, let me ask you, because we're talking UFOs, aliens, that kind of thing. Let's kind of keep it on that topic. Pentic UFO. Any updates on that? I've seen Kaz had released a couple of images. But what's been happening with the Pentic UFO?
Now, this is interesting. She's published a couple of photographs which show what she describes, as the barrel-shaped object she described in her encounter. There's some are red and some are green. She showed me these photographs before she published them when I went to the Skywatch thing with her. But apparently these were taken by another witness. So these weren't taken by anybody standing at the gate. Kaz and the other witness didn't want to. They didn't think about taking photographs. It was like they were just so shocked by what they saw. But and someone else on the other side of the mountain did. Excuse me. And excuse me.
Definitely gonna have to we're definitely keeping you out of bed, dude. I'm telling you, this is no good.
Apologies. I'm more drowsy than usual tonight. I didn't sleep very well last night because it was too hot. But yeah, it's Kaz says she's got more material, so it's an open case. I'd say the Pentic incident. Gary and Kaz are working on it. There's more. There's actually some motion picture apparently that will hopefully come out soon, and Kaz is working on a book.
Are they still getting grief? Are they still getting kind of hassle for talking about it?
Oh, there's all kinds of people giving them a hard time. A lot of people within the UFO community don't believe them. When I first looked into it, I wasn't sure. I've decided it is actually a worthy case of a study. I think it's worthy of further study. But a lot of people don't agree with me. A lot of people think I'm wasting my time and it's a fraud. I can't see that myself. I think it's actually very evidentially very good. Having researched it, having interviewed two of the witnesses myself, I don't think it is. Having looked at, there was work that Gary's done on it, both with SUFON and independently. I think it's a very interesting case indeed.
I think there's an abundance of evidence there to make it one of the more interesting events in the UK.
Yeah, maybe I do sometimes wonder this, right? That as part of this crash course that I was talking about, are they like waiting for the next landing or crash retrieval event, and then that one's going to be public? I just thought about that. It just popped into my head, and then they can say that that's the first one ever, and it's never happened before. And so they will dig themselves out of this rather tricky public relations pit they've put themselves in. I don't think it's going to work though, because people will start asking questions about Roswell and other things like that. And I think pretty soon it's a domino that will eventually lead to everything coming out.
Either that, or they know they're on their way back, Ben. They know they're coming back. Yeah.
What if? I mean, this is an important question that someone asked me this, and I thought I've been thinking about it. What if? See, there was always this saying, be careful what you wish for in case you get it. What if because we all want the truth about UFOs, but what if the truth is something really horrible? What if, like, for example, they're farming us, and we're like in some kind of intergalactic pasture, something like that?
Yeah.
It could. I mean, I'm willing. I've committed myself to saying, well, whatever it is, I want to know what it is, but it might not be very nice.
Oh, you're right. There's every chance. Every chance. There's every chance that it'll be nice, but there's an equal chance that it'll be something horrendous.
Yeah, it could be that. And from what I've seen, it's probably a mixture of things, because the aliens all appear to be so different. And like I said, people who have encounters with them often report very different kinds of experience. So it'll probably be a combination of things. The truth will probably be more than one thing. But I'm just wondering. It could shock even us, It could shock even us, and that for people who've never thought about UFOs before in their lives, it's going to be earth-shattering.
Yeah, big time. And has there been any kind of recent sightings over here that you can think of?
There's been a couple of ones that have been in the papers that actually turned out not to be very significant. There was one that was during the build-up to the European Cup final.
All right.
There was like a big headline saying, "Aliens, stay away, don't disturb the football," or something like that. That photograph, unfortunately, was the moon. It was filmed low in through the clouds in Devon, but it was published anyway, because I think they didn't really check it out first of all before they published it. But it's interesting that I think they don't really. A lot of the media don't really know how to handle this. I think this is what Richard Dolan said this, actually, and Gary Hazeltine as well. This is something they've spent so many years treating this as a joke that now they have to treat it with a modicum of seriousness. They don't know how.
That's a good point.
It's like they've still got Nick Pope to guide them. Praise be upon him. He's still on the scene. They always invite him on. He's always some kind of.
I don't get it when I see him being rolled out. I really don't.
Yeah, he's almost like a part of the furniture with this sort of thing. But I mean, he just seems to repeat the same thing over and over again. I don't trust him.
He's like a talking head.
Yeah. He's not someone I trust particularly for all kinds of reasons, but.
For all the same reasons, I don't trust Elizondo, because neither of them can break the kind of secrecy act. Over here, old Nick Pope, he's bound by the Official Secrets Act, so anything classified, he can't tell you about it, or else he would go to jail for it. So that's why I'm very sceptical of these characters, very sceptical.
Elizondo, I would intuitively, I feel more comfortable with Elizondo than I do Nick Pope. But I can't rule out that he's basically he's playing us like Richard Doty played Paul Benowitz and people like that, playing some kind of game on us.
I'm pretty sure if they were truly worried about what Lou Elizondo had to tell the world, I don't think we would see him on mainstream TV.
Unless they want this either they want this information to come out, or they, for some reason, the people trying to keep the information no longer can. It could be that there's some kind of there's been some kind of breakdown in the truth embargo. I hope that's what it is. Obviously, if I'm wrong, it means that if I'm wrong, because I'm keeping all options open. But if it turns out that that's not the case, and is actually a deliberate release of information in a certain way, then that's far more disturbing, because it takes us back to what we were saying before. Do they want us to see people like Elizondo talking about the things he's talking about to give a certain impression on the public deliberately for some kind of scam, some kind of
somebody's got an agenda somewhere.
Disinformation exercise, yeah. Some kind of cycle of psyop,
Yeah, and even like disinfo can be 95% true, but it's that stuff they just slip in under the radar, the lie, the big lie that they're trying to sell. But listen, me and Ben are just skeptical, because after years and years of doing this, we would be absolutely idiotic not to be skeptical and not to be questioning what's going on. When you see the same people that have been trying to keep this secret for so long now coming out and acting so publicly as though we want to get the word out, we've got to keep our wits about us, ladies and gentlemen. We truly, truly do. So I urge you to follow Ben over on Facebook, over on Twitter as well. And when we come back after the break, one more segment to go. I'll be getting Ben to tell us all about his recent trip to the Bases conference. We'll be talking about his upcoming trip, and I'll be asking him random questions about the Woo as well. So 3 short minutes and we'll be back with you right here on TFRlive.com. Segment of today's Kev Baker Show with Ben Emlyn Jones. It's been the Ben X Files. Yes, UFOs, alien abductions, you name it, we've been talking about it. And just recently, Ben has been able to get back to what he loves doing best, getting out on the road, going to conferences and speaking to like-minded people about high strangeness and the Woo. And one of the major kind of centres for all of that in the UK is something called the Bases Project. And I know this is somewhere that Ben loves to go. So how was it, Ben? And you got to see Miles again, so catch us up on everything, dude.
Yeah, Miles Johnston organised the Bases at the Barge 2021. It was a 3-day conference at I think it's one of the most lovely places in the world that I've ever been to, and that is the Barge Inn, which is in Honey Street, Wiltshire. It's built on the canal in the Vale of Pewsey, and it is a lovely old pub. And this is where it was set. This was a conference where every seat was full. I mean, I think people were just desperate to get there. People just really, really wanted to get out and about. This is like the revenge tourism you keep hearing about from the world of Woo. And I did my talk. I did a very interesting talk on. Basically, I'm going to do it's a variation. I'm doing a variation of the same talk actually at Awake and Aware, but I talked about what I thought was going to happen in the future. And I gave some possibilities, because, of course, I'm not certain, as you know from listening to me tonight with Kev, but things that I thought might be happening in the future based on my analysis of current affairs and the recent past. And it went down very well. There was a lot of other interesting speakers as well. There was a whole array of them. Because it was three days. For example, Maria Wheatley. Now, she's very interesting, because she studies ancient monuments like Stonehenge and Avebury and other sites like that.
Yeah, I've had her on the show many times in the past. Not recently, though.
Oh, it'd be worth getting her back, Kev, because she's recently made some interesting new discoveries. Now, this involves the fact that there are strange creatures she's found. Now, she doesn't say they're alien. She believes they're actually indigenous to this earth, and they're very like humans, except they have different shaped heads. They're slightly shorter than us, and they have different shaped heads. They're called the long skull people. You may have heard of the Paracas skulls. This is something very similar. They're not just found in Latin America, where the Paracas skulls were found there. These were found near Stonehenge, and there are graves full of these creatures, and they've been dug up. Archaeologists have picked them up, and they've been studied. They've been catalogued. They've been put into storage right here in Oxford, where I am, and Cambridge, and other universities, and it's kind of like a lost part of our past, because like in the book Forbidden Archaeology by Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson, there seems to be seems to be ignored. This is something that really deserves more attention than it's getting, and the academics who deal with this sort of thing in the professional sphere aren't really interested in them. They're looking the other way. And Maria, being an amateur essentially, and someone who's not connected to that institution, has a lot more freedom to study them than most other people do. And she's been studying these events. She's actually managed to get into areas that most other people can't, because there's the Defence Training Estate on Salisbury Plain, which is most of which is off limits to the public. She's had special permission to visit barrows like the long barrows that are on there, which most people never get to see. And there are long-skulled graves on Salisbury Plain, and she's had a chance to see them. And if that's true, it means that we're like there's these graves of ordinary people, round-headed people like us. And it appeared that they lived together. The people like us, our species, and these long-skulled people lived together from I don't know exactly how long ago, but it sort of ended around about the 3rd millennium BC. There was she thinks there was some kind of war or a massacre of some kind, at least in this part of the world, and the round-headed people killed all the long-skulled people, culled them and put them in graves. And she also says that the long-skulled people are actually the first people to build Stonehenge, and they built it as a lunar observatory, not as a solar observatory. It was originally plotted to follow the path of the moon rather than the sun. Later on, it was adapted, because it goes back much older. It's much older. The big stones were put up, I think, in the 22nd century BC. There's several parts of it are many thousands of years older, and that they were meant to track the moon, whereas the more recent ones were meant to track the sun. So it's an interesting story, I think. She really made me... really gave me a lot of extra information there, I think, Kev.
No, that sounds really, really interesting. Yeah, and again, there's been so much going on here and in every country around the world. It's like layer upon layer, civilization upon civilization. Some we know, some we don't. And it's like when we were talking last night with the guys from Down Under, they were talking about the Denisovans and the cave that they found them in. And they also found Homo sapiens in the same cave. They found another species in there as well. And as opposed to these warring factions that we read about, they were all living together in this cave. So history is far removed from what actually happened, because I see it time and time again. History, it's his story. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the true story. It's somebody's story, you know?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, it is an image painted of the past, which may be false, either through lack of failure of nerve or imagination on the part of the historians, or through deliberate suppression for a political agenda.
Either way works, right?
Yeah, and it goes back obviously if such a huge part of our own evolution is overlooked, it does make me wonder why. Now, the idea I'm interested in things like the Denisovans, because I was looking at a little mini documentary about this, because they claim that until, I think, 20,000 years ago, modern humans were confined to Africa and the Middle East, and the Neanderthals were all over Europe and Asia, and the Denisovans were in China and places like that. But they was kind of in their own territory, yet they found, like, communities where the different types of people live together. What's more, it appears that they had children together as well. Like they found skeletons which have features of what indicate that one of their parents was one and some kind of human, and the other parent was another kind of human.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing we were talking about last night as well with the guys. They were showing a number of the different skulls of these different species as well. It was truly fascinating, really fascinating. You know,
yeah, it could be like all of us have Neanderthal ancestry. We're part Neanderthal in our DNA, and indeed, in the case of some people, there is a resemblance. For example, the actor Ron Perlman, he looks if you look at him, he looks very Neanderthal in his features. Not that it could be just the way he looks; it's not necessarily he's Neanderthal, but it's when I look at him, I do wonder because if he is a modern human, obviously, but if he looks that much like the Neanderthal man, how different really were we? Maybe we're much closer than related in terms of relations than people think.
Yep. So I'm going to have to get Maria Wheatley back on. What else was happening at Bases, dude?
Well, Tony Topping turned up. He's very interesting because he does like an interactive session where he basically teaches us all and talks us through some remote viewing sessions. He provides, for example, he gives us a sheet to fill out, and we have to let our minds wander and focus on a certain image. Excuse me. And he wants to know how well we get on with it, and I seem to be quite good at this, Kev. I mean, he was basically the same. Unfortunately, it was the same thing he did in Hull, so it's possible I have subconscious memories. But when I did this in Hull, I was quite accurate. So, and he says that it's actually something that most people can do. Some people have a natural talent. People like Ingo Swann and Uri Geller, of course, were part of the program. But most people can learn to be reasonably successful with remote viewing if they practice. It comes with practice, like most other things.
And remote viewing, I would love to be able to do that, Ben. I would love to be able to do it.
Oh, it's worth trying. I mean, I've got like a disc here. You can get these from Tony.
Oh, in hell. I can't quieten my brain to even start to meditate. So when it comes to these kind of things, Ben, no. I ain't even going to bother my brain by trying.
Oh, fair enough. But
it's just one of these things like people tell you to quieten your mind or... Dude, my imagination never switches off, man.
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, this is why I'm having trouble writing my new book.
I would have to question, am I truly visualizing something in my mind's eye, or am I imagineering it? Am I just coming up with it off my own back, you know? So that would get in the way of me connecting to anything.
Tony actually did mention this. He said that he's what he calls there's noise management, he calls it, which is basically just that. He says when you're remote viewing, they teach you noise management, which is literally what you just said, your own thoughts intruding in on the process. Because, I mean, if you're trying to empty your mind is actually very, very difficult. I can't do it completely.
No. Even when you're trying to empty your mind, the fact that you're telling your mind to be emptied means that your mind's not empty.
Yeah, it's something you don't have to do that. You don't have to completely empty your mind with remote viewing, but you do have to be able focus on certain. You have to. He says just wait for 2 seconds. And you have to draw like a little symbol, whatever first comes into your head, and that's like just a clue. And then there's a number of keywords. So in terms of smell, sight, taste, touch, etc. Which, whatever impression you get to, you write those down. And at the end, then you can draw a simple picture of what you think is there.
You got Major Ed Dames, don't you? And he's done work with the police. He's worked on missing people. There's definitely something to it. Definitely something to all of that.
It's a weird thing because like people like Dames, they do like a kind of freelance course, like he's kind of independent, but he comes out of the U.S. military psychic warfare field, along with Ingo Swann, Uri Geller, and there's several other people. There's Channon as well, Colonel Channon, and Colonel John Alexander. Now, John Ronson wrote a book called the Crazy Rulers of the World and the Men Who Stare at Goats. There was a TV documentary called The Men Who Stare at Goats. Yeah. There was a movie, a comedy movie that's based on the book. There's a TV documentary called The Crazy Rulers of the World, and it's a bit frustrating because the film itself is quite funny. The movie is quite funny. It's a comedy, but the book is serious, and it touches on what I think is, it just sort of scratches the surface of something really big, a really major revelation. But Ronson then seems to pull back, and he doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to explore it in any great detail, and the book really doesn't go as deep as it should do, because what he discovers is that there were there were essentially people like not just remote viewing. There were people who can only describe as psychic assassins.
Yeah.
The title of the book means because they used to practice on goats. They used to use goats for kind of target practice, you could say. They would stare at a ghost and try to make its heart stop. That was obviously practiced. Eventually, the idea was you could actually target people, individuals. It could be used on a battlefield against an enemy army.
Nothing they won't weaponize, isn't there? There's nothing
exactly,
they won't weaponize. They even
weaponize
the woo. You know?
Oh yeah, I mean, why? If it works, they will use it. I mean, or taking out certain political figures, people, important enemy agents, people like that. They said they tried to target in the Cold War. They were trying to target Fidel Castro in Cuba, things like that, trying to make his heart stop. It didn't work. I mean, he eventually died, I think, a couple of years ago. But they were trying. I mean, and it turns out the Russians were doing something similar. They had some individuals who they were doing experiments in kind of psychokinesis and things like that. I'd love to know more about this, about what they were doing. I mean, people like one of the guys was Hal Puthoff, who's with TTSA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a very small club, actually, when you start to look at all the connections. You see these people turning up time and time again, actually.
It's an odd thing, isn't it? I mean, it does make me wary of what's really going on, because with TTSA, and I know the TTA split now, the most prominent figures, like Elizondo Mellon, and they've left. But Puthoff, you see, like there's photos of him with Uri Geller. There's this photo of him and Russell Targ looking much younger, with Uri Geller and Ingo Swann at the Stanford Research Institute, because Geller was never a celebrity to begin with. When he came over, he was brought over there in 1972 to do studies with Stanford to test the whole remote viewing thing, and they spent several years doing these studies. And it was only after that Geller ended up like going on TV. He sort of built himself a career as a celebrity magician, essentially, because let's face it, I mean, he only does a couple of tricks. There's about 3 tricks he does, and a lot of magicians say, oh, he's just doing magic tricks, it's not really psychic stuff, he just pretends he's psychic. And I can understand that, I can understand why that is. But I think possibly that might have, at the same time, he has this other side of himself where he did these experiments with Stanford. He ended up being recruited by the CIA. He also went back to Israel and worked for Mossad during the Arab-Israeli War and the Six-Day War. And funny enough, he actually admitted this to John Ronson in the book long ago, but he said he would deny it publicly, but he did tell Ronson that's what he was doing. But he speaks openly now and says that he was a psychic spy.
And I can well believe it, Spoon bender.
Well, the spoon. I think the spoon bending thing is actually quite easy. I mean, you can learn how to do that. There's a little trick to it. I thought to myself, come on, they didn't bring this guy over and spent a lot of money training him up just to bend spoons. Come on, there's more to that there's more to going on than this.
So what else was happening at bases then? Before we wrap up today, we've got about 9 minutes left.
Norris, there was a lot of dark stuff involved, and of course a lot of the things we talk about are quite quirky, they're quite funny, they're quite interesting, and they're curious, but there's a lot of darkness in this field as well, and some very disturbing things that are going on. And one of the speakers was Sophia Green, She spoke for several hours about saying that she and her family were part of a child breeding program. They came out, it was somewhere in southern Africa, and that she was basically bred, she was essentially sold to a family, I think in Britain or somewhere, and grew up not really knowing her real parents. And that's worrying, because of course you can't do that legally. You can't just breed babies to sell to people, but there apparently are people doing that.
Well, not heard of her, must admit.
Yeah, and who else was there? It was interesting. Dave Hodrian. Now, he did an interesting talk on screen memories. Again, this is related to alien abduction, going back to that. That there were actually... that some people, you see, will... when they have alien abduction, they don't actually remember having the alien abduction. What they say is they'll have strange experiences, like they'll be lying in bed one night and an owl... Usually it's an owl, is the most common one, but other animals sometimes as well, will suddenly appear in their bedroom. Sometimes an owl will land on the window ledge and appear inside or sometimes just appear inside the bedroom. Sometimes other animals do as well. And occasionally people as well, or unusual people suddenly just appear out of nowhere. Pilots, for example, doctors, and... What Dave thinks is going on is that the alien abduction experience in some cases is being disguised. The human memory, either our own memory is doing it or whoever's doing the abduction is making us doing it. We're remembering them wrongly. We're not remembering what actually happened. We're remembering something else to cover for that original memory. Very strange. Have you heard of things like that?
I have heard of it. The owl thing is quite... That comes up quite a lot. I was looking at an actual study that's been done over in Russia the other day, and they're looking at people during rapid eye movement sleep and seeing whether or not they're able to induce the type of events, the type of lucid dreams that would account for people thinking they've been abducted by aliens. People thinking stuff like that's going on. It's a bit of a grey area, that, because I do think sometimes you've got a bit of sleep paralysis going on. I do think sometimes our brains probably imagine things that we interpret as being real. But then again, sounds like I'm a fence sitter all the time. I do think these things happen as well, though, Ben, so it's hard. Again, it's separating that signal from the noise, right?
Well, Dave actually did a research program on this, but together with his brother, who's actually a research psychologist. You see, because sleep paralysis is an experience which a lot of people have, including me. I get sleep paralysis quite regularly. Usually, it's just I'm just lying there and I can only move my eyes. But sometimes strange, I can see things in the room with me. Usually, occasionally I've seen an old lady. Or sometimes I see a big black cowled figure, like the ring wraiths in Lord of the Rings. Alien abduction is qualitatively different from sleep paralysis in several ways. Andrew, his brother, has been helping with this. That's Andrew Hodrian, who's Dave's brother. For example, in sleep paralysis, you generally, people stay where they are. They stay in their beds. Sometimes strange experiences can happen to them, sometimes very frightening and horrible experiences can happen at the hands of very, very strange non-human creatures. But the person himself is lying in their bed. With the alien abduction, they're actually moved elsewhere. They're often taken to a spacecraft or something like that. And there's something, I can't remember the rest, but I know Dave actually he spoke at the very, very first UFO Truth Magazine conference in Holmfirth. And he did a talk about sleep paralysis and alien abduction and the difference between the two. And I think it'd probably be on YouTube somewhere to watch. It's very, very interesting. Because he did work alongside. It wasn't just his own work; it was like a combined effort with him and his brother. So
we had him on the show one time a good few years ago. Nice guy.
Yeah, it's good to see him again. Actually, yeah, he's invented a card game.
Oh,
that's going to be coming out soon. It's called UFO Wave.
Nice. I like it. I like the sound of that.
So, and I look forward to playing that.
Who are you looking forward to seeing in Watford this coming weekend then?
I'm looking forward to seeing all of them. I mean, I'm familiar with Simon Parkes. I'm familiar with Kerry Cassidy, Mike Oram, Maria Wheatley. Colin Wolford is a very good friend of mine. Mike Oram is someone I've not seen for a while, but he is multiple contactee. He has several screen memories, including waking up in one night and seeing a tiger in the room with him. That's his screen memory, is a tiger. Now, that's weird. It's literally a great
different. That's
tiger
definitely different.
Sitting at the end of his bed. That's one I've not heard. That's an unusual one, definitely. But he's written a book called Does It Rain in Other Dimensions? And it chronicles his experience with other worldly encounters. Now, he went to Warminster during the Warminster thing. Now, that's quite something. This is quite a long time ago now, Kev, but from the sort of mid-'60s to the mid-'70s, there was a big UFO flap in Warminster, Wiltshire, and people were seeing all kinds of weird stuff and experiencing all kinds of weird things. And up on Cradle Hill, the famous hill near the town, Mike was, weird creatures used to appear, like men in black, other weird beings. It was almost like I think we talked on a previous show about the Point Pleasant and the Mothman.
Yep.
It was like that, and Mike has done he has a little segment in his book about that. So I'm looking forward to seeing them again. It'd be nice. I
think when we get back together next month, I think we should talk about the Warminster event.
Oh, there's a hell of a lot to talk about.
I think we could do a segment on that. So I'll take a note of that. But we're almost out of time, Ben. So I want to give you a couple of minutes to let people know how they can join you this weekend or the following weekend when you go to the Northeast one. Tell them the websites, everything you want them to know.
Sure. Well, if you want to come along to Awaken Aware, it's ufoacademy.com. As I say, not to be confused with the TTSA. It's in Watford, England, at the High Elms Manor. And we on Thursday, that's the day after tomorrow, the doors open 4 p.m. You can the ticket prices, if you want to come on one day, it's £35, but you've got to pay cash at the door. They couldn't take bookings in advance because we didn't even know if this was going to go ahead till the lockdown ended. But you can pay £60 and attend for both evenings. But it's a good idea to reserve your seats. So there's a little button you can press on the website called Reserve Your Seats. So they'll just know you're coming along. Now, Truth Seekers Northeast is a private event. It's in somebody's home. So
we don't want you to gate crash in people's homes then, listeners. We don't want that. We don't want that.
There's only room for about 25 people. I think they're all people who are active with Truth Seekers Northeast, which means it's not really open to the public, unfortunately. But I will be taking my camera and my sound recorder, and I will be recording both of the talks I give. So that's something. I'll make sure they're both recorded. So hopefully pretty soon you'll be able to, even if you can't make it, to the events, you can hear it. But
we are out of time, brother. We're out of time, so we're going to hand off to the next live show right here on tfrlive.com. I'll be back tomorrow, so don't go anywhere. More live radio right here on your number one network, tfrlive.com, and wherever you are, make it TFR and dinny touch that dial.